Welcome back to Story Highway, where stories don't just teach English. They remind you of the places inside your heart that you forgot existed. Today's journey is about a man who lived his entire life waiting for someone to believe in him, until a stranger gave him the courage to believe in himself. In the quiet outskirts of Denver stood an old, weather-beaten bus stop where a man named Ethan Brooks waited every morning at 5:30 a.m., no matter the season, no matter the storm, because life had never given him the luxury of slowing down. From childhood, Ethan had been the kind who grew up too fast. His father gone before he turned 7, his mother juggling jobs that swallowed her nights, leaving Ethan to raise himself on promises he wasn't old enough to understand. And though he dreamed of college, scholarship forms, and a life bigger than the cracked sidewalks he walked on, reality dragged him into factory work at 15, where he learned early that some people are used to build roads they will never walk on. At 32, Ethan's life was a cycle of long shifts, empty dinners, and a loneliness so deep he sometimes spoke out loud just to hear a voice in the room, until one freezing winter dawn, as snow whipped across the road like shards of glass, a woman named Grace Sullivan appeared beside him at the bus stop, shivering in a thin coat. She was new in town, carrying a folder of job interviews and a smile that flickered like a candle fighting the wind. And when she asked Ethan, "Does the bus always run this early?" he replied quietly, "Only for people who don't have another choice," a sentence that made her look at him with a softness he wasn't used to. From that morning on, Grace began arriving every day, her cheerful chatter slowly chipping away at the walls Ethan had built to survive. And soon they were sharing stories. Her dreams of starting a small bakery, his hidden talent for sketching blueprints and fixing machines. Until one day she remarked, "You're smarter than the job you're stuck in." A simple sentence that rattled something buried deep in him because no one had ever said he could be more. When Grace didn't show up one morning, Ethan felt an ache he hadn't felt in years, an emptiness that made him realize just how much space she had filled in his life. Then 2 weeks later, he found her sitting at the bus stop with swollen eyes and a rejection letter in her lap, whispering, "I'm tired, Ethan. I'm trying so hard." And for the first time in his life, Ethan reached out and held someone's hand, not because they needed saving, but because he did. That night, remembering Grace's faith in him, he dusted off the old textbooks he once buried under his bed and began studying again. Hours after his shifts, eyes burning, hands shaking, heart terrified. But he kept going, whispering, "Just one more page, one more step." And when Grace saw him weeks later, with his notebook full of equations and dreams, she smiled with a pride that made his chest tighten. Months passed, both of them working, both of them fighting their storms together. Ethan applied for a technical certification he thought he'd never earn, and Grace, encouraged by his determination, applied for a small business grant with her bakery idea. The morning Ethan received his acceptance letter, his hands trembling so badly he could barely open it, Grace hugged him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "See, I told you. You were never meant to stay where life left you." Soon Ethan secured a job at an engineering workshop, doubling his salary, finally stepping into a future he had never dared to imagine. And Grace opened her tiny bakery, Grace and Grind, with Ethan repairing the ovens, painting the walls, and sketching a little logo of a rising sun because he told her, "You helped mine rise." Years later, people often whispered about their love story. But if you asked Ethan, he would simply look toward that old bus stop, now replaced with a new one, and say, "That's where everything changed, the day someone believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself." And every time he said it, Grace squeezed his hand and replied, "You walked through the storm, Ethan. I just held the umbrella." Thank you for traveling with us in Story Highway, where every story reminds you that storms don't last forever, but strong hearts do. If today's journey touched you, remember, sometimes all it takes to change a life is believing in someone who's forgotten how to believe in themselves. Come back tomorrow for another story worth hearing.